Hello everyone. So, it's taken me 35 years to get to this point where I finally understand why I have suffered so much internally. And I just want to quickly say that before we get into this topic, if you're somebody that is quite fragile at the moment and not in the right state of mind to be upset or conjure up feelings that you don't really want to feel right now, it's probably best you don't watch this video, because this is something everyone I speak to is dealing with. Everyone is running away from what's going on inside. Many people have deep suffering that they keep away from the rest of the world. And in this video, you're going to have a glimpse, you're going to start to understand why your suffering is the way it is, why you have suffered. Now, what I've found is that I've tried this with a few people now, is that people are very reluctant to go inside into those feelings. And we all get those feelings where we seem overwhelmed. The intensity of emotion that overcomes us, of stress, fear, whatever it is, it's different for everyone, is that when that moment hits, people run away. They have addictions, they're workaholics, they do anything to escape those feelings. And I think the reason why people have a tendency to run away, like myself, I've had loads of addictions since I was a young kid, is that we don't fully understand why they're there. Why are we consumed so heavily by negativity and being overwhelmed by these, horrible feelings? You're looking around you, you're looking to your surroundings, and you can't really put two and two together. You might even just wake up with a feeling of dread, of depression, of complete sadness, or whatever it is. And that tendency to run away is purely because you don't understand where it's coming from. Those feelings you're experiencing are a flashback of your life, things you've been through, things you might not even remember. And what we have to do is we have to start logically thinking and breaking down our childhood. What many of us do is we downplay, we try and get on with our lives, we go, what's done is done, no point looking back. My mum did the best she could, my dad was better than his dad. Whatever it is, we all make excuses and try to move on with our lives. Now, what I want you to do is to think about things you've been through. Think about your life and think about the needs of a child: to be loved unconditionally, to have someone interested in them, to have someone guide them through life. All the needs of a child. And look at your childhood and look at it objectively. Now, I felt very loved. I felt very loved, but on closer inspection, what I start to realize is that the love came at a cost. I was only loved by my mum when I fit the box she gave me. She is a full-blown narcissist. She has mental health problems of her own, severe ones. And she had a box for me, and when I was in that box, I felt loved. And it came at a great cost. I had no authenticity. I didn't trust my emotions. I didn't trust my feelings. I didn't trust anything inside, because I had to be what this person wanted me to be. That's what I learned early on. And really, if you look at that situation, A child that has to suppress themselves, a child that isn't authentic to themselves and has to wonder whether they're going to be loved if they do something, or does do something they want to do, or says something, or acts a certain way. If you're constantly second guessing whether you're going to be shamed or unloved or love taken away, is that going to create a healthy child? And there's many things I can go into. I can fully, after 35 years, I can really look at all my needs as a child and how they weren't met. And I've started to look at all the experiences I've gone through and start to understand those emotions that arise in me so strongly and so deeply, where at times I've actually gone into shock, I've gone pale, I've curled up into a ball under a duvet and I just don't move for hours because I'm so overwhelmed by what's going on inside of me. And it's taken me to now to realise that these are all symptoms of my childhood, of my relationship with my parents, of my lack of guidance, of everything else. And like many people, for the longest time, I would always say, you know, what everyone says, what's done is done, you can't get anything from it now, don't look back, my mum did the best she could, blah, blah, blah. You make all the excuses in the world, and what this does is that this tells yourself, like you were told as a child by your caregivers, is that this is not important. My feelings are not important. What I went through is not important. I don't need to be acknowledged. I'll get on with it. And I tell you now, I've tried this on a few people now, is that lack of self-acknowledgement for yourself and what you've been through means you carry that for the rest of your life. So when I finally acknowledge what I've been through, I finally realised that all these negative emotions that arised in me are a product of the past. They've not just come out of nowhere. I'm not just going about a happy life and suddenly struck down by severe depression. These are a symptom of your memories in your body, of what you've been through. Isolation, not being unconditionally loved. All the things the child needs, how your needs weren't met. These are symptoms. So what I started to do was, when I'd have these unbelievable feelings come up inside of me, instead of shaming myself, instead of denying it, instead of saying, you know, I haven't got time for this, what even is this for? You're like, we've got a nice day, why am I getting these feelings now? You know, this is ridiculous, blah, blah, blah. All the things we do to downplay our own pain. And instead, I'd just breathe and I'd sit with myself and go, I know why I have this. I know why I have this deep pain. I was neglected, massively neglected as a kid. I played video games 12, 14 hours a day in my room with Sudocrem on my face because my body dysmorphia was that horrific. And nobody cared. Nobody cared to ask me anything. I grew up in this world with no guidance, no nothing, just gaslighting, manipulation, conditional love. And actually no one invested in me. No one actually cared to build me up as a person, or guide me, or know what was going on inside. Instead, if I felt the need to cry as a kid, I'd go and hide. Whether that was in the forest or behind a couch, or, you know, I didn't feel safe in my emotions. So if you think about all those things you've gone through as a child, not outrageous things, you know, that's what I got caught up in a long time, is like I thought of trauma as somebody that's escaped a country that's in war, which is highly traumatic, and all these events I just see that as trauma. And now I see it as a child that was neglected is a deep trauma. So I was set up to fail. I was set up to fail in life. And I couldn't see the trauma because it was all going on inside. So when those feelings started to arise in me, I'd sit with myself, I'd brood myself, I'd actually not talk down to myself, and I'd say, I know exactly why these feelings are here. I was neglected as a child. No one was invested in me. No one cared for me to improve my life. Even when I was ill, no one really did anything. My body dysmorphia was so bad that I didn't leave my room. I actually slept all through the night, all through the day, and awake all night to avoid contact with people. I was completely addicted to video games and everything else I could get my hands on to escape my feelings. And this continued for a decade. How would I be okay with that? How would that make a healthy person? And as I started to really look at my life objectively and my relationship with my mum, I started to make sense of why I was in so much pain. And I tested it. I said, well, okay, it does feel painful actually. Let me go and talk to my mum. Mum, you know, these experiences actually have caused a big deep wound in me, and I'm not blaming you or anything. I know you've been through your own traumas and everything, but I'd like to speak about it. Oh, you do exaggerate, James. Don't hurt me more than you already have. And there it was. That person's not just morphed into that person. That's the way it always was. It was always about that person. And I learned to survive in that environment at the expense of myself. So, when I first escaped being chronically ill and started interacting with normal people, and they say, how are you feeling? And I go, I don't know. I don't know how I feel. I don't know how I feel about this or that or what's just happened. My feelings were never important growing up. It wasn't important to that person. So you see what I'm saying? I started to understand why I was the way I was, why I had such deep suffering. My needs weren't met. I wasn't guided. I had no one invested in me. It was all about that other person. That was my worldview. Everything else that happened to me with her schizophrenia and everything, and believing everything she said, all these different, I put it together and I went, I know why I have this pain. And I started doing that. I started sitting with myself, I know why I have this pain. I started having self-compassion for myself. Started looking at it from a different point of view. And all of a sudden, I started to feel lighter. And then it would come around again and I'd do it again. And I felt lighter. And all of a sudden, I started feeling peaceful. Deeply peaceful. Because I acknowledged myself finally, what I've been through. Not shunning it, not escaping, not using addictions, not using all these different things. Acknowledging what I've been through. And having self-compassion. Now, this is where some of us struggle. Everyone I've spoken to struggles with this, self-compassion. They don't know how to practice it. Now, it's a little bit easier for me because I have a child. But when I took my little boy in my head and popped him in my living situation as a child, all of a sudden, I feel a level of compassion that I couldn't feel for myself. Now that he's in that situation, it makes sense. I make sense of it. I go, no wonder. No fucking wonder I suffered so much. Now, let's change the situation again. I lived in a nice house. And I would always be told, you're the luckiest boy alive. Look at the toys you've got. Look at the house we live in, right? And that was my mantra. I am so lucky. I am so lucky. I am so lucky. The thing is that a child's needs aren't to be in the nicest house. There's a lot of emotional needs that are more important. So I took myself out of that nice house and put myself in a not so nice house. Or I put my little boy in the situation in a house that wasn't as nice. Everything started to make sense. And I've had these feelings come up, and I've accepted them, and I've seen it for what it was, and the tragedy that took place in my life, and the pain that caused me that I didn't acknowledge. And it just started to make sense. But in that pain, in that acknowledgement, in that accepting myself and my feelings and sitting in that feeling and not shaming myself for being somewhere better in my life, a better career, whatever it is, all the pressure I've put on myself, and actually had compassion for myself, I've actually been able to heal emotionally. And that's not to say that this is done now. Next chapter, I'm all healed. There'll be things that come up in my life, but at least I now know why it is I've suffered to the extent I have. And knowing why those feelings come over me makes it a lot easier to deal with. I can have compassion for myself in that moment now. I can sit down with myself. I can breathe into it and go, this is the past coming up. You know, and a really good book, CPTSD, talks emotional flashbacks, which is very important to acknowledge that. That was a big breakthrough for me as well when I read that book. It's just very important to acknowledge yourself. And that's not to say that you need to go out and, hunt down people in your life that have done you wrong. It's nothing about them. It's about you. You acknowledge yourself, what you've been through, and what that's done to you, how that's made you feel. Because many people just downplay it and run away from it their whole lives. They become an alcoholic. They do drugs. They, play endless video games. They do everything they can to escape these feelings. So that was my breakthrough. I acknowledged myself. I acknowledged why I had pain. I understood why I had pain. And by changing the perspective of putting my little boy in the situation, the compassion arose in me that wasn't there before. And it's painful, guys. It's not nice by any means. But if you want to move forward, if you want to have peace in your life, if you want to have inner peace, you need to go through it. Michael Singer says, whatever you store with pain will come out with pain. And I absolutely loved Michael Singer's work. And it really was a part of the puzzle to me and me getting to where I am now. But he practices breathing into those emotions, letting them be, not judging them, letting them come up. And those feelings can be so overwhelming, they were for me, that it's very hard to do that. But the way I can now understand where they're coming from makes it easier to sit through them. So if you go away now, look objectively about your relationship with your parents, your upbringing, what you went through, and find some self-compassion for yourself, maybe putting your own child or just your own little self in that situation and just imagining that little girl, that little boy that has no say, has been born into that situation and just has to survive. Shape the perspective in a way that gives you self-compassion, and you will find over time those feelings will start kind of resurfacing. Once you start allowing them to come back up, and by allowing to process them, I believe that's what gives us some kind of answer, some kind of resolution. Thanks for watching, everybody, and I hope this has been helpful and it's given you a bit of a perspective on something you can use to help mend your mental health, help mend your life, help mend your chronic illness, and going through this work to not have to suffer to the extent you do. Okay, thank you, everyone.